So welcome to Online Organizing Tools 101. If this is your first time coming to a 350 New Hampshire training or event, welcome. So glad to have you. We are a grassroots climate justice organization in New Hampshire and fighting for a safer, cleaner, better future for all of us. So first thing I'm going to talk about is Zoom etiquette. So it's going to be relevant right away because I can hear a little bit of background noise. So if everyone could mute their microphone, it'll be in the bottom left corner of your toolbar on Zoom. When you're not talking, that's great to reduce background noise for other folks. And then the other thing is if you could put any questions that come up as I'm going through in the chat, I will be sure to check it periodically to answer any questions that you'll have. Yeah, so if y'all could make sure your microphone is muted, feel free to ask questions along the way. I will stop a few times to answer all of those. The other thing about the chat box is when you open it, there's an option that it'll automatically send your message to everyone. But if you click on the little drop-down menu, you can also send a message specifically to a single person. And yes, I will be sharing this online later. Awesome. So we already did introductions. I'm going to go into Zoom a little bit, Slack, Google Drive, social media, and then I'll be able to answer any and all questions. So the goals here are to learn some of the basics of the digital tools that we use to collaborate with each other from afar, and then a little bit about like why we use those tools and how, if we harness them in the right way, it can really help an organization become really powerful online and help people collaborate together, especially in a place like New Hampshire when sometimes we live really far away from each other, and working together digitally is more convenient time-wise. There we go. All right, so I wanted to take a minute to ground us in why we are doing a lot of this digital work right now. And a friend broke this down to me last week with 3 things that their organization is working on right now. And in this moment, the first thing is to look after each other. So one reason that we're connecting with people digitally and I'm spending a lot more time on the phone than I usually do is that we're trying to make sure we're looking after our neighbors and our family at this time. The other thing is why we're still trying to take action digitally is that we want to seize the moment. Climate solutions can be pandemic solutions in some cases, and we don't want to let this moment get away from us and find out that once we get through all of this, all the climate action was stalled and we're even further behind than we need to be. And then another reason we're still working digitally is to prepare for the future. We'll be able to meet in person again at some point, so we want to plan that and be ready for it when we get there. Cool. So Zoom. Obviously, we all managed to get onto Zoom. So a cool thing I'm going to mention is that Zoom right now, because of coronavirus, has extended their free accounts so that people can have calls longer than they usually can. So if you go to zoom.us, you can sign up for free on their page. All you need is an email address, or you can sign up with Google or Facebook. And I'm noticing a lot of people's families doing this too right now to have like a joint video call together. Zoom, their free version usually is 40 minutes at a time, but right now they're letting people use it for an unlimited amount of time, which is really cool. So once you have a Zoom account, you are able to schedule meetings, and those meetings they're pretty easy to schedule, but they are helpful to get things on people's calendar, especially if you're sharing a Zoom account with someone else, like 350 New Hampshire does. So logistically, when you go into the website, on the left side, there'll be a tab that says meetings. You'll schedule a new meeting, and that'll open up a menu with so many options. The important things I'm going to point out here are to make sure you put in the right time and date, the duration of the call, because it can cut you off if your duration is less than the amount of time you're on the call, and then the time zone. I've accidentally scheduled a call in the wrong time zone and then didn't have that person on the call because, whoops, time zone was wrong. And then you can also set recurring meetings, and the most important step is to save it at the end. And then the way you all got here was the link that I shared with you. So in your Zoom account, once you save a meeting that you've scheduled, you'll be able to go down to where it says invite attendees, join URL. If you copy the invitation, it'll bring up that really long set of text with a few phone numbers in it and a link, which is what I sent to all of you. All right. All right, and so the next thing, and then I'm going to answer a few questions, is that Zoom has all of these cool in-call tools. So you can mute your microphone, you can start or stop your video share, you can invite new people to get on the call while you're in it, you can manage the participants, you can share your screen like I'm doing right now, and also go into breakout rooms. So you all probably don't have breakout rooms as an option on your toolbar, and that's because I am the host of this call. So the host of the call has a lot more tools available. Another thing that Zoom is doing for security purposes is I can manage the participants, and if someone were to come in here and not be here for the right reasons and was disturbing the peace, so to speak, I could kick them out if I wanted to. I heard things like that have been happening on a few other calls, so it's good to be cautious. And then, oops. Sorry about that. Don't know what my computer's doing. Cool. And then you can also record, end a meeting, share things in the chat while a video is going on. So does anyone have questions about Zoom? Zoom has some new default settings such as waiting rooms. Exactly, yes. So one of the things you can do when you're scheduling a call is to allow a waiting room. And that would mean whoever the host of the call is can enable that when they're creating the call, and then it'll pop up, someone is in your waiting room, and you have to accept them to let them in.
Yeah, I also noticed when I was working with Zoom today that actually they've changed the default settings. So unless you uncheck it, you're going to have a waiting room, and you have to be alert to whether somebody is waiting to come and join the group.
Exactly, yes. Thank you for adding that point. Yeah. This call today, I made sure to disable the waiting room so that everyone could get in and I didn't have to pay attention. But yeah, that's absolutely something to keep in mind. What format is the meeting recording in? It's going to be recorded as a video. So I think I'm going to upload them to YouTube so that it's a little easier for people to access. And then how do you kick someone out? That is a good question. So when you go into Zoom, your bottom toolbar will have a button that says security. And I think it's only the host who has the security button. So I would have a little button that if you click on security, it'll come up with a few options. You can mute everybody, you can turn everybody's camera on or off with, well, not on, but you can turn everyone's camera off with that. You can also kick out a specific person with that. So it's a security button on whoever the host of the call is. Are there any other Zoom questions? Yep, the video is in MP4 format. Thank you, Mary Beth. Awesome. I will continue on. If you have other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I can answer them at the end as well. Cool. So some best practices for Zoom are to stay muted when you're not a speaker. In cases where it's a discussion, that's a little more important than if there's a presentation. One of the things that is commonly used is to use an asterisk in the chat box to notify the facilitator that you have a question or a comment that you would like to verbalize instead of typing into the chat. And then the other thing that isn't as relevant here because I'm presenting something is to take space and make space. If you're on a Zoom call with discussions, I find it's important to pay attention to how much I'm contributing compared to how other people are contributing so that I'm not taking up all of the space when other folks could be talking. And yes, Rick, that is correct. All right, so the next tool I'm going to talk about is Slack. So 350 New Hampshire uses a Slack space to communicate with our staff, with our youth team. There are a number of volunteers in the group, but right now one of the things we're working on is trying to get more of our regular volunteers in the group. So I'm actually going to ask anyone who's on this call who is a regular volunteer with 350 New Hampshire or just wants to potentially become a more regular volunteer with 350 New Hampshire, send me an email after this and I will get you into the Slack space. So this is what the process for that would look like. I would send you, I would put your email into our Slack space and it would send you an invite. So this little pop-up here that says join 2020 Presidential Action Team on Slack is an invite I received. I click join now and it sends me over to Slack. So you can download Slack as an application on your phone or on your computer. I find it useful to have it on both because I'm using it for work constantly. And it's really helpful because it is easier than having 200 email chains going on at once. So once you get into the Slack, you're going to have all of these workspaces. As you can see, I am in a whole bunch of them right now. Once you open one of those workspaces, you'll be able to see all the channels in there. So our youth team has a channel that they communicate in, the staff has a channel they communicate in, and the general channel is where everyone in the Slack space is going to be, and that I am hoping to be able to use more often to notify volunteers of like events or any other important updates so that it's not just social media that people are getting updates from. In the Slack channel, you'll then be able to see who you are speaking with. So right here, I Slacked a message to myself. So you can send messages to individual people on Slack or to a channel, and the channel will have a number of people in them depending on who is in that channel. Some of the best practices for Slack are to turn on notifications, have the app on your phone or your computer. I find both is helpful. Channels are places to discuss specific projects. So if you noticed, there's a fundraising channel. So we're going to get our fundraising team into that space. And then you can tag people within it to notify them that you're trying to send them a message through Slack. So yeah, if you're involved in 350 New Hampshire in any way, shape, or form, we can add you to the Slack. Are there any questions regarding this one? I can give a more step-by-step process for folks who want to join into the Slack channel. So there's a question, is Slack secure like Proton or Signal? Slack doesn't have the same level of security as Signal or Proton. I think those ones are more secure, but Slack also doesn't have open access the way that like Facebook Messenger does. It's somewhere in the middle in terms of security. And yes, you're correct. This assumes that everyone has a mobile phone. So this is helpful for folks who do have a mobile phone or are able to access it on their computer. Definitely not a perfect communication form, just another way that we can communicate with folks outside of just direct phone calls. Cool, I'm going to head on to the next slide. So really brief little tidbit about Google Drive. So Google Drive is a place to store all your important documents so that they're accessible on different computers or phones or workspaces. It's an easier way to share documents and work on them at the same time. And I'm mentioning this mostly because of its usefulness in organizing with people from a distance. Because in Google Drive, all you need to have is a Gmail account, which is free to make. You can create folders and documents and sheets and presentations like this one, and you can share them with other people. So the cool thing about Google Drive is that I can be working on the same document with 10 different people from across the country all at the same time, and we're seeing who's creating what changes. Some of the features in Google specifically are that you can go in and look at the history of a document, so you can see who added what to it. It's really helpful for collaboration in that way. This document in particular is for a website update that's coming up, and I shared it with the designers who are working on that with me. So in the document on the right side, there'll be a big share button that opens up something where you can put people's emails in directly, or you can get a shareable link that you can then send to people. I do this a lot with Slack with our staff team. I'll get the link and share the link into our Slack space so that everyone can open the check-in document that we're working on for that day. You can also share entire folders, which is really helpful, especially if you want to share like pictures with people. So I have a number of photos of pictures from like climate strikes, and I can share them with anyone who has a Gmail account. The one thing about Gmail is that you do have to have a Gmail account. So if you had like an MSN or an AOL for your emails, you would have to create a Gmail specific account to use it. Mostly I'm mentioning this tool because it's a really helpful way to collaborate with people. It's great for saving documents that are already on your computer so that if something happened to your computer, those documents live on the internet somewhere. And the G Suite Learning Center is super helpful if you want a little bit more of a guide into how to create your own presentation or how to create your own Excel sheet in Google. And I am also down and willing to show people if you're trying to work on one of those things. You're more than welcome to reach out to me. So are there any specific questions about this? And thank you for coming, Mary Beth. Good luck with your next meeting. Yeah, quick little tidbit about Google. So here's where I want to spend the bulk of my presentation, social media. So this right now is the key to connect with people across the country. If used right, it can also be the key to getting people to take action. And I want to put a big disclaimer over this section that social media isn't the greatest way to communicate with people. It can be toxic in some situations, and it can be a huge time waster if you're just scrolling through social media for hours. But if utilized in the right way, it can be really effective for organizing, especially when we can't connect with people face-to-face right now. So in terms of what I think the goals for social media are, if used in the right way, is for an individual person, it's to connect with people, it's to connect with organizations. In a lot of cases, social media can be the first avenue for getting updates about what an organization is working on, or what other people in your life are up to. Wedding announcements, birth announcements, all would come in into local newspapers, but social media tends to get it to us first. When you're talking about an organization, the social media goals are a little more related to broadening your reach. Being able to reach people who you maybe wouldn't see face-to-face, who are more frequently on social media. It can also be really helpful to create a central location to share your events and information to your supporters, rather than just sending them like 10 emails a week. So I'm going to go a little bit into some of the do's and don'ts for effective organizing on social media. In terms of things that are really good to do, it's good to refer back to messaging guidelines if you're posting on behalf of a page or organization that you're a part of, or if you're posting or sharing something from that organization. What I mean by that is that organizations have certain ways of talking about subjects. So for example, with global warming, right now, the narrative is climate crisis. So people are using the word climate change or climate crisis more now than they are global warming. Global warming was used more often in the past. Another important thing when you're sharing things on social media is to add commentary to what you're sharing. So if you're sharing an article or a petition, it's a lot more helpful if you share a quote from that article or a short tidbit about your own personal thoughts and feelings about what you're sharing with people, because it makes them more likely to click on it. If you're sharing a petition with me, I'm more likely to click on it if you're telling me why you think I should sign on to it. Another thing is to keep it simple and clean and concise. No one tends to read the like 5-paragraph essays on Facebook about whatever article is being shared. And if you want to get your point across, the shorter and more concise, the better. And then the other thing with social media is that pictures and videos tend to be the most popular items. So those get shared more often. If you have noticed on some of 350 New Hampshire's social media pages, I try to do a combination of sharing articles and photos and videos. And usually I won't just share a status update without attaching a picture or a link or something to it. And then on the other end of this, social media don'ts, while you can argue with people on your own personal page if you feel like it, my advice is to not argue with people on comment threads, on articles, or on organization pages. One of the reasons why is that Facebook algorithms put the person's comment at the top who gets the most comments on it. So usually when you open the comment section of, say, a news article that's been shared around the internet, the first comment that will come up will be whatever the thread is that people are really arguing about and really getting into it on. And it's not really helpful. Another important thing is to not forget to proofread before you post or tweet. Facebook will let you edit your posts after you have posted them, but Twitter doesn't. So just something to flag, because a lot of people will type something out, post it, and never look at it again, and then realize a week later there was a typo. And then I think I got this from a high school teacher, but the KISS method is to keep it simple, silly. So the more simple you can express, or if you can express your ideas in a more simple way over social media, you're going to reach more people who wouldn't otherwise read like a really long written post from you. So now I'm gonna just skim over some Facebook and Instagram and Twitter tips and some of the tools that I find really useful for organizing. So Facebook is really helpful for events, because in the event pages on Facebook, you can search for events if you want to know where the farmers markets close to you are. A lot of them will have the Facebook events. You can share news links and articles across Facebook. It's really helpful for that. Some people get their primary news on Facebook. So if you're sharing news that feels really important to you, you're helping the people who are your friends on Facebook get the kinds of content that you read a lot or that you find interesting. And then live streaming events. So once you create your post on Facebook and click on the little ... it gives you that huge list of options. Two things I want to point out with Facebook in particular is that if you post a link to an article in the post, Facebook will automatically generate the picture that is associated with that article, and then you can delete the URL and the article will stay. So that's really helpful because that eliminates all of the really long URLs that tend to come with articles. The other tool I'm going to highlight is the live video. So the live video button under your post creation is how you go live for live streams to share with your followers. And we do this a lot at climate strikes or other actions. It can be really cool to do for like a birthday, if someone's blowing out their candles. If you are live streaming over a mobile device, hold your phone in profile view, not horizontally. Unfortunately, Facebook doesn't like to do the horizontal live streams. Instead, everyone on your page will have to tilt their head all the way over to the side to see what's going on in your video. And then the other little difference on Facebook is sharing on your news feed versus your story. So your news feed will come up on the front page of your Facebook. Your story will be this tinier square at the top, and usually there's a rotating bar of stories that you can watch from other people or other organizations. And then I'm just putting this little resource in here. I will share this presentation with you all at the end so that you can have access to all the links that are in here. But if you are creating a Facebook page for a business or for an organization or something, this resource from Buffer is super helpful because it helps you learn a little bit more about some of the tools. Because if you are an admin on a page like 350 New Hampshire, you have access to creating ads, you have a huge notification list, you can schedule your posts so that they go out at certain times, and then there's other things to like boost your awareness of your brand, your business, or your organization. All right, I'm going to answer all of the social media questions at the end of the social media section, but if you think of one while we're going along, feel free to drop it in the chat. So I'm gonna move on to Instagram really quickly. This one is generally skews younger. It's primarily posts and stories that are all made up of pictures or videos, and that's the most popular thing on Instagram. So the buttons on the Instagram page will be for your home page, for you to search for somebody or for certain subjects. The plus button is how you add a post. The heart button will show you how many people have liked your post. And then the one on the far right is your own page. So the circle where the 350 New Hampshire Action logo is, if you click on it, you would be able to see our stories. So the stories are only there for 24 hours. Those tend to be people sharing like whatever's going on during that day. We'll post stories, as you can see, about GOTV or from the No Coal rally back in September, or the youth takeover when the high school team managed the story for a few weeks. And those are stories that were saved as features. You can see next to it where there's a button, a plus button that says new. That would be how you save the story so that it's featured on your profile and people can go back and look at it. All right, and then when it comes to Twitter, Twitter is good for tweeting at a reporter or at a politician because most of them have a Twitter account. While not every politician manages their own Twitter account, it's a way to get messages out there and to get things across. People will have Twitter storms at a particular person. Back when the Democratic debates were happening, we had people tweeting at the moderators in New Hampshire to make sure that they included a climate question at the debate. Twitter is also good for live updates. If there's something happening now, people will live tweet at an event they're at to give people updates as to how it's going. Another thing that you can see on Twitter is trends. So usually during things like the Democratic debates, for example, if you look up the hashtag #DemDebate, you'll be able to see like everyone who in the country who is tweeting about that thing. And that's interesting if you want to look more at how larger groups are reacting to things. And then Twitter storms is what I was talking about with tweeting at a particular person and just sending a whole bunch of people tweeting at them so that you'll get their attention. Some of the tools I want to highlight is that in Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, you can directly message people. There will be a message inbox on Twitter here where a lot of times that's how I share tweets from other organizations. When they want me to share it, they will send me the tweet in a message. The other thing to note here is the bookmark page and the list page. So if you create a bookmark, that'll be like a certain page or a certain tweet that you wanted to hold on to. And the lists, if you wanted to make a list of all of the nonprofits that you like to follow, you can go to that list and just see tweets from those groups, and it'll leave out all the tweets from other people that you follow. You could do the same thing for a group of reporters or whatnot. And so, like, why do we use social media? In this time, especially with everything that's going on with coronavirus, it can be a really powerful way to tell your story. I'm seeing so many stories about grocery store workers that are fighting for a higher minimum wage. I'm seeing stories about nurses and doctors on the front lines. And social media, it can, if used in the right way, be like a really powerful way to get your story across. And then I am leaving some more resources in here about some of the tools I talked about. And yeah, I'm going to answer questions in just a minute, but I had a few ways that folks could get plugged in right now if you are looking for more things to do. So we have some more trainings coming up this month. Then we have some local chapters that are still meeting, not in person, over Zoom call, and some remote teams that are just starting. Those are new. Feel free to send me an email if you want to set up a time for us to chat one-on-one. I can answer any questions about 350 New Hampshire or get you plugged into a team. And then I have an announcement about NHPR. The 350 New Hampshire youth team is going to be on the exchange on NHPR on Earth Day. So that's going to be next Wednesday, April 22nd. That's going to be really exciting. They're going to be on the air with some other guests that NHPR is inviting to talk about how climate activism has changed now with coronavirus and the ways that those things overlap and how some policies might be good solutions for both issues. So yes, thank you all. I'm going to stop recording.